the Sustainable Development Goals have been developed essentially by bankers. You could describe it, or I would describe it as a global Wall Street coup, essentially. Well, not necessarily Wall Street, but, transnational finance. I mean, you have people like Mark Carney, former Goldman Sachs, former head of Bank of England, Bank of Canada, Financial Stability Board, aider and abetter of HSBC's money laundering for drug cartels. He's the person that's in charge of climate action for the United Nations. Their other point man is Mike Bloomberg, former Salomon Brothers, former mayor of New York, billionaire guy. And if you think these people care about the environment and sustainable development and building a more inclusive world, I'm sorry, but you have been had. Larry Fink is in this group too, and he doesn't, to think that he wants to make a more inclusive world is insane. He's interested in increasing the amount of assets that BlackRock manages, and pretty much only that.
And this is exactly what is happening right now. The elites have a massive plan already in place that's been in place for not just the last couple years, but technically the last couple decades. And in this video, I really want to outline what's actually happening. So welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. Let's take a quick look at this video of Larry Fink from BlackRock, literally telling you what is coming, what they have planned.
And we believe it's so important to be anticipating the next move. I would also say on the beginnings of a ETF Bitcoin, we believe ETFs are a technology no different than Bitcoin was a technology for asset storage. We believe the next step going forward will be the tokenization of financial assets. And that means every stock, every bond will have its own, basically, CUSIP. It'll be on one general ledger. Every investor, you and I, will have our own number, our own identification. We could rid ourselves of all issues around illicit activities around bonds and stocks and digital by having a tokenization. But the most importantly thing, we could customize strategies through tokenization that fits every individual. We would have instantaneous settlement. Think about all the costs of settling bonds and stocks. But if you had a tokenization, everything would be immediate because it's just a line item. And so we believe this is a technological transformation for financial assets. I believe if you want to talk about voting and voting choice and all the things, if we know every moment who is the owner of that stock and it's now time to vote, every individual who has ownership is identified and they can vote their own share.
Now, what he does say in this video, I find very interesting because what he is actually talking about is tokenized IDs as well. Digital IDs, tokenization of everything. This is leading us down a path to a CBDC financial system. Yet so many overlook this. And even now, as we do really kind of look at what some of these organizations like the IMF have been pushing, we have a new era for money. That's right. As bytes replace all currencies, some changes will be welcome, others may not. This is literally talking about CBDCs, the introduction of CBDCs. This was back in 2022, by the way. The same year that we started to see BlackRock pushing for a CBDC and also investing into digital ID companies. But we are supposed to forget that, right? Because apparently they're going to pump Bitcoin, right? This is where we really kind of look at where we are headed. And we are headed into a world where the elites want complete control over almost everything. And when you control the money, well, guess what? You do control everything. And also from the BIS, they already pushed a blueprint for the future monetary system, improving the old, enabling the new. And they're going to start by saying, hey, guess what? This is going to improve this and that. The savings are going to be incredible. All these efficiencies we're going to have. It's going to sound great. But we already know what this is leading us down. It's a path of control. And if we actually look into this, right, they do mention tokenization, unified ledgers, but guess what else they mention? CBDCs. They talk about CBDCs heavily within this article. And yes, crypto, DeFi, DLT, it's all a part of it. But the main goal is CBDCs. That is where, that's the end goal for all of these elite organizations. Why? because they don't care about getting rich. That's the biggest misconception. They care about the control aspect. They feed on control. Now, also outside of this, look at what's been happening in just the last year alone. ECB official proposes unified European ledger for digital assets. Again, this is leading us down the path to a CBDC, digital euro. And what's funny about this is they already have this planned. ECB DLT trials. Check this out. This is what Germany's biggest banks to settle tokenized securities. Now, this is after just a couple months of the ECB pushing the fact that they are ready to push a CBDC. They're looking into, 2025. Also, 41 institutions joined the BIS tokenized cross-border payment project Agora. Again, this is all focused on CBDCs. When you hear tokenization, when you hear digital currencies, these central bankers and these major organizations like the BIS, which is the central bank of central banks, they are talking about CBDCs. And by the way, the IMF just recently pushed an update on October 2nd, positioning central bank digital currency in payments landscape. And this is where they are talking about the acceleration of this. And they're focused on adoption, trying to accelerate adoption and force adoption as well of CBDC-based systems. Anyone that is sitting here saying CBDCs are, some sort of conspiracy theory, or they don't believe that CBDCs are going to happen, or they're simply saying, just say no to them, guess what? That is not how we escape CBDCs, and they're already here. They're already happening. Also, Kristalina Georgieva, managing director of the IMF, said last November, CBDCs can replace cash, offer resilience. What this actually means is that they are trying to replace cash with CBDCs. And they're going to do this through significant events because this goes all the way up the food chain. Go all the way back to COVID. During COVID, guess what we heard? Oh, guess what? Cash usage is dropping. Oh, I wonder why. Is it because people are locked down? They're not leaving their house? But it allowed them to push the digital currency narrative. Now, I want to go back to Larry Fink and all these big players and all these big bankers and play with you guys this video clip actually from Whitney Webb as well. Check this out.
The people that are essentially behind a lot of the net zero plans, behind a lot of the other SDG plans that essentially move us from the model, the free market capitalist model into more this technocratic model where, every commodity, everything is going to be tokenized. And you've seen Larry Fink in the past couple of days be very open about that following the approval of the BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, for example, talking about the tokenization revolution and all of this. But there's an effort here to take this, much farther than it's ever been taken before, and to essentially just not just tokenize, existing assets or traditional assets, but also create new asset classes like natural assets, all these natural asset corporations that have sort of been in the news lately and have sort of, received some pushback. But there's definitely a lot of efforts underway to essentially tokenize the whole planet, increase the amount of assets in the existing economy by being like, now this lake is an asset, now this forest is an asset, and all of this stuff, tokenize, fractionalize it, and basically create this insane new financial system that's different than previous financial systems. But everything, including nature and humans, will be tokenized and traded like financial products. And that's essentially what a lot of this is leading to. And you have most of the countries on the world, those that are pursuing Agenda 2030, essentially leading us into that. And so, at some level, I think the geopolitical push and pull between, BRICS and the West is real. But I think, at the higher levels, they ultimately agree on the goals. So I don't really think one is necessarily a true effective challenge to the other. And if you're against the ambitions of the SDGs and Agenda 2030, then you should be against them regardless of if they're being championed by Russia and China or the United States and the EU. Ultimately, it leads us to the same place, which is going to financialize and tokenize everything, but also surveil everything to an unprecedented extent. And increasingly uses, debt slavery. Mark Carney and Fink and all of these guys, under the auspices of the UN, talked about reimagining the World Bank and the IMF, all the multilateral development banks, for the purpose of basically using debt to finance the SDGs and doing all these things like debt for climate swaps, debt for nature swaps, which are essentially, land grabs and all sorts of things, framing it as, necessary to save the planet. And maybe that justification works for the left, but I think it would be naive to assume that they aren't going to retool the talking points to appeal to the right. I think that's definitely going to be happening. And if you look at Fink himself, he's tried to go away from being the point man for ESG and all of this towards a guy that's saying, like, look how profitable this is going to be for us. And you can have a part of the riches by tokenizing your land and putting it on this platform where it can be traded and whatever. Like, you can have a piece of all this wealth and whatever. I think that's how they're going to try and frame it. And I think people need to be very, very aware, because, the efforts to manipulate us to acquiesce to this system are unprecedented. And I think ultimately, if you have a good grasp of what they want to enact on the global stage, regardless of the justifications or the political figures they use or influencers and media that they try to use to sell this to you, if you are firm in your opposition to these agendas, then you'll be able to sort through the nonsense. Because as you said, all the stuff coming out online is increasingly just so psyop after psyop after psyop. And, it's hard to know who to trust and who to believe, what have you. But if you know that the end goal is global governance, mass surveillance, the end of privacy, all of that, you can look at who is pushing those agendas and say no. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to say no. You have to know what your red lines are, and you have to make it about trusting your red lines and trusting where you stand, not so much trusting this political savior or that political savior or this media influencer, which I think a lot of people have been doing. And I think it's definitely time for another model, particularly when it comes to US presidential politics, because how many times can we vote for the lesser of two evils and have a good outcome? It's never happened, and it's not going to keep happening. And, all of these efforts, in the case of Trump, to explain away his decisions last time and act like it's going to be different this time. We can't wait to see what's going to happen this time. The situation has come to a head arguably already, and it's up to people to find local solutions and build something with their communities that will help them help everyone in that community protect themselves against all these stressors and crises that are to come. Because waiting for the right guy to get in the White House, regardless of who he is and whatever intention and motivation he has, one guy in the White House is not going to solve all of this, because arguably, the president is really a figurehead, because at this point, the US is so bureaucratic and massive. It doesn't really matter who gets elected, every 4 years in a November. The agenda is going to continue.
And she is 100% correct. When I listen to Whitney Webb talk about this, I see so many people saying like, oh no, Trump's going to get in and he doesn't want a CBDC, even though he has been pushing for a stablecoin. Both sides are already on par with this plan. This is already happening. It's becoming a reality. The elites have a very significant hand to play in all of this. They are pulling the strings. It goes all the way up the food chain. They're all playing accordingly into this. All of these organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, the BIS, every single one plays a role. And even all the big banks. And even the geopolitical tensions that we see with the BRICS and even with, the West, guess what? They're all pushing the same agenda. They're all a part of the same agenda. What we are seeing right now is a lot of psyops, a lot of distractions, and it's to distract us away from what's really going on. So please wake up. Please listen and understand what is going on. And with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys would definitely leave a like, subscribe, to notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.